Rating manipulation is a success bought in advance. That's the sentence I used to repeat to myself when I wanted to feel less like a fraud and more like a businessman. My name's William. I'm 38 now, and I've spent enough years pretending I was just good at marketing that the lie started sounding normal in my own head. About 9 years ago, I owned a small restaurant. Nothing glamorous, just a narrow brick place on a side street with 12 tables, a leaking back door, and a neon sign that buzzed louder than the customers. I had borrowed money from my older brother, burned through most of my savings, and convinced myself hard work would be enough. It wasn't. For the first 3 months, I opened every morning with this stupid optimism. I'd grind the coffee beans, line up the chairs, check the reservation book even though I already knew it would be mostly empty. Then I'd spend half the afternoon staring at my phone. Not for messages. For reviews. That's where the panic started. A couple of bad ones hit early. One guy said the soup tasted like dishwater. Another said the service was slow, which was true, because the service was mostly me running between the kitchen and the front while trying not to look desperate. Then the stars started dropping. 4.2, then 3.8, then 3.4. If you've ever run a business, you know people don't read, they scan. They see stars. That's it. A stranger with a phone can decide whether you eat rent that month. I remember sitting alone after closing one Tuesday night. The place smelled like onions and bleach. I had the day's receipts in my hand. $73. Not profit, total. That was the night I crossed the line. At first it didn't even feel criminal. It felt practical. Survival. I told myself everybody was gaming the system anyway. Bigger places bought followers, paid influencers, buried bad press. I was just smaller, poorer, and later to the party. But once you give yourself permission the first time, your conscience gets quieter faster than you'd think. And that was the beginning of what I did. The next morning I woke up with a plan that felt ugly and brilliant at the same time. I wasn't thinking like a cook anymore. I was thinking like someone trying to manufacture trust. I spent half the day studying review sites instead of ordering produce. I noticed patterns. Fresh accounts with only one review got flagged. Clusters of 5-star posts from the same area disappeared. But older accounts, people who had reviewed hardware stores, dentists, gas stations, those stayed. That was the first thing I learned. Credibility has a history. I made a spreadsheet. Names, cities, dates, writing style. It looked ridiculous, like a detective board built by a man trying to save a failing lunch service. I'd opened email accounts from different devices, different networks. Library Wi-Fi. My apartment. The cafe 2 blocks over. Paranoid already. Then I wrote drafts. Not praise. Specificity. The mushroom soup was unexpectedly good. The waiter looked exhausted but kind. Human details. Imperfections made them believable. That night I posted only 2. I kept refreshing the page for an hour, waiting for them to vanish. They didn't. And that scared me more than if they had. Once those first 2 stayed up, I stopped thinking of it as a desperate experiment. It became a system. I started treating the whole thing like a second job. Mornings were for the restaurant. Nights were for building a version of reality that looked better than the one I was actually living in. I bought a cheap notebook and wrote down everything that could make the reviews feel lived in. Weather, what song was playing, what table caught the afternoon light, which waitress laughed too loudly. Tiny details made strangers sound real. I also learned restraint. 5 glowing reviews in one night would look fake. One every few days looked organic. Sometimes I even posted a 4-star review instead of 5. Good food, a little slow during lunch. That kind of sentence did more for me than any exaggerated praise. The weirdest part was how quickly it started working. New customers mentioned seeing good things online. They walked in already expecting to like the place. That was the moment I realized I wasn't only writing reviews. I was writing expectations. The first real test came on a Friday night. For weeks the dining room had been mostly quiet, forks, low conversation, that buzzing neon sign. Then suddenly every table was full. People were waiting near the door. A couple asked if we had reservations available for the following weekend. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt my stomach tighten. The strange thing about getting what you wanted is that it becomes harder to hide from what you did to get it. I was running between the kitchen and the floor, trying to keep up. Orders stacked faster than I could read them. My cook, Luis, kept shouting ticket times. At one point he leaned toward me and said, "What happened? Did someone write about us somewhere?" That sentence hit harder than it should have. I shrugged and said maybe people had finally noticed us. He smiled. He looked proud. That was worse. Around 8, I saw a woman standing near the front window scrolling through her phone. She glanced at me, then at the screen, then back again. And for the first time, I felt watched. She stayed by the window longer than normal. Most people check a menu, maybe look around, then either come in or leave. She kept reading. Her face didn't change much, but every few seconds her eyes moved from the phone to the room like she was comparing two versions of the same story. I remember wiping my hands on a towel even though they weren't wet. My heart had started beating hard enough that I could feel it in my throat. When she finally sat down, she asked for coffee first. No food. That made me more nervous. People who only order coffee usually want time. Time to watch, time to think. I brought the cup over myself. She looked up and said, "You're William, right?" That one sentence made the whole room feel smaller. I said yes, probably too quickly. Then she smiled, not warmly, not coldly. Just curious. "I read a lot of reviews before coming," she said. "Some of them sound unusually similar." I laughed. It came out thin. And suddenly every conversation in the restaurant sounded like evidence that I told her people probably just noticed the same things. Same soup, same cramped tables, same tired owner trying not to drown. I even forced a little smile, like we were sharing a harmless joke. She didn't smile back. She introduced herself as Mara. Said she worked in digital marketing. Pattern analysis, she added, almost casually. Then she took a sip of coffee and kept watching me over the rim of the cup. That was when the adrenaline really hit. My skin felt hot, but my hands went cold. Every few minutes I checked the dining room, half expecting someone else to walk in with a badge or a camera. Irrational maybe, but fear doesn't care about logic. Mara wasn't accusing me outright. That somehow made it worse. She asked small questions. How long had we been open? When had business improved? Did I manage the online profile myself? I answered carefully, but too carefully. I could hear it in my own voice. Before leaving, she put cash on the table and said, "People trust what they read." Then she walked out with no expression at all. I barely slept that night. Every sound outside my apartment made me sit up. A car door. Footsteps in the hallway. My phone lighting up on the nightstand. I kept imagining emails from the platform, warnings, account suspensions, customers realizing half the voices online belonged to me. At 3 a.m. I opened my laptop and started reading through every review I had written. For the first time they didn't look clever. They looked staged. Too polished. Too aware of themselves. I could suddenly hear my own fingerprints in the sentences. Panic makes you do stupid things fast. I started deleting what I could. Not all at once, that would look suspicious. A few accounts first. Then I changed passwords, erased spreadsheets, cleared browser history, even threw away the notebook where I'd been tracking dates and fake names. I ripped pages out by hand and dropped them into trash bins 3 blocks apart like that would somehow make me invisible. By sunrise I was exhausted. And then Luis called. He said, "William, did you post something online? People are arguing about us." I got to the restaurant before opening and found Luis already there, leaning over the counter with his phone in his hand. He didn't look angry. He looked confused, which somehow felt worse. He turned the screen toward me. Under our page there was a new thread. Someone had written that several reviews looked coordinated. Same rhythm, same phrasing, accounts with oddly similar timing. A few people defended us. A few laughed. One person said this was exactly why online ratings meant nothing anymore. My mouth went dry. Luis asked, "Do you know what this is?" For half a second I almost told him everything. The words got as far as my throat. Then survival stepped in. I said competitors do this all the time, post rumors, stir doubt, scare customers away. Even while I said it, I hated how natural the lie sounded. He studied me for a moment, then nodded, but slowly. That morning hardly anyone came in. And the people who did kept looking at their phones before they ordered, like they were checking whether we were real. By noon the room felt heavier than an empty restaurant should. Every chair that stayed vacant looked accusatory. I kept wiping the same counter, pretending I was busy while watching the door. Around 1, Mara came back. She wasn't alone this time. A guy with a camera bag stood a step behind her. Not filming, just observing. My chest tightened so fast I thought I might actually pass out. She told me quietly they were working on a short piece about online trust, how small businesses, agencies, even freelancers shaped ratings to survive. She said my place had come up during research. Not an accusation. An opportunity to comment. That word almost made me laugh. Luis was in the kitchen, but I could feel him listening. Mara asked if I wanted to say anything on record. My brain split in two. One part wanted to deny everything. The other was suddenly tired of rehearsing explanations, tired of pretending every good review had appeared naturally. I said I needed a minute. Then I walked into the back room, shut the door, and stood there shaking hard enough to hear the shelves rattle. In that back room I stared at the shelves like they might tell me who I was supposed to be. There were cans of tomatoes, boxes of napkins, invoices clipped to a nail. Ordinary things. That almost made it worse. I hadn't robbed a bank or disappeared into some criminal underworld. I had lied inside a place where people came for lunch. I could hear voices through the door. Not the words, just the rise and fall of them. My pulse was so loud it felt mechanical. I started rehearsing versions of the truth. I was desperate. I never meant to hurt anyone. Everybody does it. That last one disgusted me as soon as it formed. It was the sentence I had been hiding behind from the beginning. When I stepped back out, Mara looked calm. Luis looked at me differently, like he already knew something had shifted. I told the camera guy not to record yet. Then I said, "Some of those reviews weren't real." The silence afterward felt enormous. Luis didn't speak. He just lowered his eyes. Once the words were out, they kept coming. I told them how it started, the slow weeks, the rent, the loans, the panic of watching strangers reduce months of work to a number beside my name. I explained the fake accounts, the scattered Wi-Fi connections, the notebook full of dates and invented people. Saying it aloud made it sound smaller and uglier than it had inside my head. Mara didn't interrupt. The camera stayed off, just like I asked. That surprised me. Luis finally spoke. Quietly. He asked, "Why didn't you just tell me we were in trouble?" That question landed harder than anything else. Because there wasn't a good answer. Pride, maybe? Shame. Maybe I couldn't stand another person seeing how close I was to failing. He nodded once, but it wasn't forgiveness. It was understanding mixed with disappointment. Mara said they didn't need my name if I didn't want it public. She was interested in the pressure, not the spectacle. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt exposed in a way I hadn't expected. The article came out 4 days later. She kept my name out of it, kept the restaurant anonymous too. No street, no photos, nothing obvious. But if you knew the place, if you knew me, you could feel it between the lines. A struggling owner. Manufactured praise. The quiet panic of trying to survive long enough to become legitimate. I read it 3 times before opening that morning. What surprised me was how fair it felt. Mara didn't paint me as some mastermind. She also didn't excuse me. She wrote that desperation can explain a choice without making it honest. That sentence sat in my chest all day. Luis came in late and put the article on the counter. He said, "So now what?" Not angry. Not even accusing. Just tired. I told him I was deleting everything that remained. No more fake accounts, no more staged praise, no more pretending. If people came, they came. If they didn't, at least the silence would finally belong to reality. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "Good. Start there." The next few weeks were rough in a way I hadn't prepared for. Not dramatic, no police, no lawsuits, no public collapse. Just a slower, colder kind of consequence. Some regulars stopped coming. A few new customers would sit down, glance around, then leave before ordering. I could almost see the hesitation working behind their eyes. Trust doesn't explode when it breaks. It drains out quietly. For the first time since opening, I stopped checking ratings every hour. At first that felt like losing control. Then it started feeling like oxygen. I changed small things I should have fixed earlier. Better training. Shorter menu. Honest wait times. If the kitchen was backed up, I said so. If something was bad, we remade it. No polished version of reality, just the actual one. One evening an older man paid and told me, "Food was good. Service was slow, but you were upfront about it." That tiny sentence stayed with me all night. It wasn't praise. But it felt more real than every five-star lie I had ever written. About 6 months later, the restaurant finally felt steady. Not booming. Not packed every night. Just steady enough that I could pay suppliers on time and sleep without calculating rent in my head. That would have felt like victory once. Instead it felt quieter than that, more honest, maybe. One afternoon I was cleaning the front window when Mara walked in again. My first reaction was still a flash of panic. Funny how the body remembers before the mind does. But she was alone this time. She ordered lunch. Ate slowly. Before leaving, she said the piece had triggered a lot of responses. Owners, freelancers, even musicians wrote to her. Different industries, same pressure. Everyone chasing visibility because visibility had become survival. Then she said something I still remember exactly. "The worst part isn't the lie. It's how quickly the lie starts rewriting the person telling it." After she left, I sat there for a long time. That was when I understood the real cost. I hadn't almost lost the restaurant. I had almost become someone who could no longer tell where honesty ended. So that's the story. I never got arrested. No handcuffs, no courtroom, no dramatic ending. In legal terms, I probably got lucky. In personal terms, I paid for it differently. For a long time I thought crime looked like greed, people wanting more than they deserved. What I learned is that sometimes it starts with fear. Fear of failing publicly. Fear of disappointing people who believed in you. Fear can make bad decisions sound reasonable, even necessary. That doesn't make them harmless. The part one regret most isn't the fake reviews themselves. It's how easily I began protecting the lie. The hiding, the rehearsed explanations, the way every conversation turned into a calculation. That changed me more than the act did. If anyone reading this is standing where I stood, cornered, desperate, convinced one small dishonest shortcut will buy time, don't do it. Shortcuts don't solve panic. They rent relief and collect interest later. And once you start editing reality for strangers, you start editing yourself too.